Thank you very much. I appreciate the information. And Mr. Hoskinson, did I say that? I'm trying.
Yes.
Thank you very much. And I know we just have a few seconds left, but there's a lot of discussion about whether we should regulate certain cryptocurrency as commodities or securities. What do you think might the benefits, and maybe you could talk just a little bit about that. What are the drawbacks, things like that?
Well, with 37 seconds,
I'm sorry, yeah.
No, the gentleman can take as much time as he requires.
Oh, thank you, Mr.
well,
Chair.
I
There you go.
appreciate that. Thank you.
I mean, don't push it, but
It's a fine line here.
You got to be careful. I'm Italian. So, when you look at cryptocurrencies in general, I've always viewed them like financial stem cells. They're kind of more fundamental than a particular category, like a currency or a commodity. And really, it depends on the markets they're traded on and the use and utility that they have. But at the end of the day, you have to ask yourself, what public policy considerations are you attempting to satisfy? Is it sanctions compliance? Is it consumer protection? Is it market stability? What we do as an industry is we're all about transparency. So it's kind of funny, we're talking and debating about disclosure regimes. There's no other financial asset in the world that really is as transparent as a cryptocurrency. Every transaction from the very beginning, for Bitcoin, for example, from January 3rd, 2009, is known. Every single one, the holdings of the founder are known because all of these things are publicly available to everybody. So it's more about, in my view, understandability and the tooling required to make this work on a global basis. So I don't think it would be wise to say, well, is it a security or a commodity, or fall into this temptation of who's the more permissive regulator or what is the regulatory arbitrage, but rather just take a step back and say, what things do we want to guard against? And we now have 13 years of history as an industry of, I think, 6 or 7 collapses, a whole bunch of interesting new things like NFTs that have always pushed the limit, and a global marketplace with more than 100 million people floating around that we can draw from, and we can look on a case-by-case basis and build a framework that makes sense. What's encouraging to me as an entrepreneur, briefly, is that there's a lot of great legislation that's been proposed recently, like the DCA, the FIA. There's executive orders that have come through that are trying to force clarity amongst the executive branch. So these things together create a global dialogue, and if we're clever about it, I think we can converge to a reasonable compromise that we as an industry can live with and continue to be competitive with.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that. And thank you, Mr. Chair, for your indulgence.
thank the gentlelady. I'd like to yield to the ranking member. If he has any questions, Mr. Thompson.
Well, Chairman, thanks so much. Mr.